So to start making the ravioli, I need to make the pasta because your pasta needs to rest a little while you're sorting out the filling. And normally when you make pasta, we put the flour in the bowl and then we add the egg. But because I don't want to make a huge amount of pasta, I've got one egg in my bowl, which I've just lightly beaten. And then I'm going to add flour to that. I've got 100 grams of flour on my plate, and it should take just over 50 grams of flour to make the pasta dough. So I'm just going to add roughly half of that and then just stir it up with a knife. If you start with the egg in your bowl, it allows you to judge a bit more easily how much flour you need to put in. So I've put in roughly half, but I can see that's far too wet to be a ball of pasta. So I'm going to continue to add flour, a little bit at a time, until I've got a nice smooth dough that looks a little bit like pastry. I've added more flour to the bowl and now I've got rid of my knife because this dough is nearly there. This is too wet though, it's still sticking to my fingers. So you can get rid of your knife, just add the flour a little more slowly, and you need to work just small amounts of flour in until, a bit like a pastry, when you're finished, this dough will not stick to your fingers. You won't necessarily get a nice clean bowl doing it this way, but you should be able to feel, and that feels better, so I'm just going to put it down and knead it on the worktop. It is still a little bit sticky, I can feel it's still a little too sticky. I don't want it to be sticky or it will not go through the pasta machine. But now I've reached the stage where I can put a little bit of flour down and just knead this until I can feel that it's not going to stick. I can feel it sticking to my hand as I'm kneading, so I'm just going to move it off the flour, move it back to the flour every time I feel it's a little bit sticky. And I'm going to continue kneading this until I've got a nice smooth dough. You can see that's very uneven and lumpy. So as I say, I'm going to keep putting a little bit of flour down, keep kneading until I've got a nice, smooth, soft dough. When your pasta's nice and smooth and it's not actually sticking to the worktop, you don't need any more flour to roll it out. That's fine. We can put that to rest while you do the filling for your ravioli. So this needs to be wrapped up in a bit of cling film to stop it from drying out, and that just needs to go into the fridge for 15 minutes while you make the filling. So the filling for your pasta is your choice. You can put what you like in it. For the lesson, I've gone for a bolognese type filling, just a meat filling, because it's easier. In your exam, of course, you can use what you like. The important thing is that when you're making this bolognese filling, you chop your onions really small. We want the filling to be well cooked. If you have big chunks of onion in this filling, the chances are it will push through the pasta as you are trying to put these together and seal. So spend a bit of time making sure that your onion is nice and finely chopped, so you have more chance of your pasta holding together. So remember to use bridge hold, claw grip. You don't have to use all of the onion. You can get rid of the little end bits, but small bits that are going to cook will be much better. You can change the filling for these for your exam any way you would like. You can use spinach and ravioli, or spinach and ricotta. You can use a cheese filling, but the important thing is that the filling is already cooked before this goes into the pasta. Fresh pasta only takes 2 to 4 minutes to cook normally, depending on the size of it, so we don't have time when you're cooking the pasta to cook the filling. So having chopped my onion, I've added my beef mince, and I am going to put this on the cooker, cook these together. I'm not adding any extra oil because fat will come out of the mince, and I'm going to stir this constantly until the mince is completely browned. Then I'm going to add just a can of chopped tomatoes, a little bit of tomato puree, some herbs. If you want to put garlic into this, you can, but for this filling I would not be putting peppers or mushrooms in because, again, they tend to be quite chunky and you're not going to get a huge amount of filling in the middle of each bit of pasta. But while your pasta is resting, make your filling. This can be cooking or cooling while we then roll out the pasta. Once your bolognese is cooked, I've put mine into a sieve so that I get rid of some of the moisture. You want quite a dry mixture to go in there, and when the meat is cooked, if it hasn't evaporated enough, just pop it into a sieve over a bowl. You can always use what comes underneath to help make a sauce to go with your ravioli, tortellini, whatever it is that you want to make. And you can just spoon a little bit, just stir it a little bit, and more will come through. So I'm just going to leave that over on the side to dry out while I finish up with the pasta. So I've got pasta machine ready. If you haven't got a pasta machine, you can just roll your pasta out, but your dough should be quite nice. And I'm just going to roll this in a little bit of flour. I just want it a little bit flattened to start with. On your pasta machine, you need to start on the widest setting. So it's really a two-handed job, this. Sometimes it's easier if you've got 3 hands. But first of all, for the first go, you put your pasta through once, then you fold it into 3, pick it up, turn it round through 90 degrees, pop it through again, still on the widest setting. And I'm going to do that again. I'm going to fold it in half, fold it into 3, pop it through so that the pasta has been through 3 times on the widest setting. And then what you need to do is turn down and make it slightly thinner. As your pasta keeps going through and gets thinner and thinner, it will obviously get longer and longer, and sometimes it's easier, and I'm just putting it on the worktop on a little bit of flour. This is some of the spare flour that I had. I don't want it to stick to the worktop. If you find that it becomes too long and too unmanageable, just cut it in half and keep going, but just 1 notch at a time until you get to the thinnest setting. Another click, there we go, I'm nearly there. There we go. So if you're doing this on your own, you can just let it fall back onto the machine, keep going. Just make sure that you keep putting flour underneath so that the pasta does not get stuck. This is the lowest setting, I think. I think this is the last time this is going to go through. So again, I just need to help move it out this end. It's almost the length of my worktop. That's it. That is as thin as my pasta will go with this machine. I've got nice thin pasta. I'm just going to move the pasta machine out of the way for a minute. And that was the clamp dropping to the floor. But I've now got one nice thin long sheet of pasta. So there we go. And I'm just going to put a little bit of flour underneath it, make sure that none of this is going to stick to my worktop. There we go. So there are different ways to shape this. With my pasta machine, I got a little ravioli maker, which I don't normally use, but if you have something like that, you can use it. What you would need to do is measure it up against your pasta. So measure against your pasta. And if you haven't got one of these, we can shape by hand. Put that on top. You can see this isn't going to do all of these, I don't think. I might just about, there we go. Put it on and push the pasta in. I actually need it to be level with that edge. So I need it to be level with that zigzag edge there, and then I can push the pasta in, and then you would need to fill, if you've got one of these, each little dimple with some of your meat mixture. It's important not to put too much in because we've got to coat the top of this as well. So that first one, I think possibly a little bit too much, but you just push it in to each of the little spaces. So push it in, you would fill the whole lot, brush this with water, so brush over the top with water, and then have another piece of pasta cut. And if I cut another piece ready, once, there we go, once you have filled that all up with pasta and brushed with water, that goes on the top, and then there are zigzag lines in this one, and you just roll the top over. So I'll finish that one in a minute and I'll leave that to one side. However, lots of people don't have anything like that. So the other ways that you can shape this, if you're doing it by hand, would be to cut some squares from the pasta. Excuse me. So the other way you can do this is to cut squares from your pasta. So there's lots of different ways we can shape this. So if I cut 3 strips, and I really want these to be squares, so about there. 1, 2. These are going to be quite small because this hasn't made a particularly wide strip of pasta. So I'll show you with squares first of all, and I just want to separate these out a little bit. So squares, you have a choice. So normally, if we're going to do a ravioli, what we would do is get a little bit of the meat in the middle of one of the squares. You can do these larger. I'm doing these quite small, but you can make large ravioli. Just don't make the filling too thick or too big. We do want to have a reasonable amount of filling inside there, but you've got to be able to seal your raviolis around the outside. If you prefer, you can put just lines of the ravioli, lines of your little circles on the pasta and then cut and fold up, but I like to have my squares done. These 3 I'm going to do slightly different. So I'm going to do 3 ravioli and 3 tortellini from these squares, just to show you the difference. So whatever it is that we're doing, I'm really hoping I'm not putting too much in there, just need to damp the edges of the pasta with water, and I would get all your filling on and then damp the edges of the pasta, because if you do one at a time and you put your pasta down on wet worktop, it's going to stick. And I'm hoping I can work with these quickly enough that these are not going to stick for you. So square ones for ravioli, put that in the middle and press down. You have to excuse. Okay, so to do the ravioli, put the filling on the top and press down really hard around the filling. Put the pasta on the top. You can see I've managed to get a little air pocket in that one. That's not good. That's quite likely to burst when the ravioli is cooking. So pasta on the top, press it down around the pasta and try not to get any air trapped in there. We want a good seal around it, but no air trapped in there before it's cooked. If they're uneven, like this one, so this one, I just want to put a bit more flour underneath it before I put it back. The edges are not tidy. You can just trim it up so there is no extra pasta around the outside. Don't take too much away because we don't want them to open when they're cooking, but just trim it up so it's neat. Or same as in the ravioli tin, you can just put your blobs of filling on your pasta, put another sheet of pasta on the top and then cut them out. If you prefer, you can use a round cutter. You'd need your squares to be slightly bigger, but you could use a round cutter to cut around those when they are done. So I've made at the moment 3 ravioli, which I've put to one side, and then I want to do these ones. You can also do tortellini with a square, and I've left that a little bit long, but what you would need to do with those is take the edge of the pasta and turn it over so it's a triangle, and again try not to get any air in there. And then just flip the middle up and wrap the edges around to get your tortellini. So I don't know how much of that was actually visible. I'm just going to move this one down and do it again. So just putting flour on my fingers, so I'm going to fold it over in half and press all along the edges. So press along the edges like that, so you've got like a little pasty shape. Flip the middle bit up, so flip the middle bit up and then curl around the 2 edges. The other way that you can shape your ravioli is to, or your pasta, is to use a cutter. So I just do the 3rd one and move that to the side, move this back over, and the 3rd way that you can do it if you want to is to just use a cutter. So put your filling in one, brush the edge with water. So filling in the middle of your circle, brush the edge with water, 2nd circle on the top. Press that down. Okay, trying to make sure that you've got no air in it. And then if you just wanted to tidy it up, you could put your circle back on the top. Lose a little bit around the outside where you've pressed the 2 together, and you have that one. The other way that I was saying you could do it, and it is entirely up to you, it doesn't matter which way you do it as long as it is done. If I just cut that bit off there for a moment, there we go. So you could put your filling on your pasta. So put your filling on your pasta, make sure that you've pressed it down nice and neatly. You can damp the edges around it. So damp the edges around it and fold it in half. As long as you remember to try your best not to get air in it, and then you can either trim it up again with your knife or with a cutter. So there are different ways that you can shape your filled pasta as long as we keep the edges sealed. The filled pasta, fresh pasta, is only going to take between 2 and 4 minutes to cook, so you need to lower it gently into boiling water for it to cook. I've got a selection of the cooked ravioli on the plate. They're different sizes and shapes because of the way that I've made them. You would need to make sure for your exam that you have similar sized ravioli on your plate, or whatever type of filled pasta you're going to do, with a sauce next to them.